That doesn't happen to us. Well, clearly that wasn't the answer. So what had happened is the report cited that the government should look at creating offices within the various departments within the U.S. government to work with their counterparts. For example, the Department of Treasury was assigned the task of working with the financial service industry. The insurance companies, the banks, the credit unions, the financial services, to be your liaison to make sure that you indeed are doing what needs to be done to protect the financial structure of the economy. And one of the first questions came up and said, well, what's the government got to do with it? That's privately owned. It's market forces drive interest rates in banks. But when you think about what happened, particularly in the aftermath of September 11th, when the financial systems went down just in New York, and what happened to the economy for months and months and months after that. So clearly there was, and with the dependency that we have on the financial services on IT systems, it became very, very noticeable that, yeah, we have to do something, and we have to do something now. So the Treasury said, that's your job. Work with them and make sure that they're doing IT security or information security in the proper way. And you go across the other government agencies and the same answers to those questions were given. Now, that resulted subsequently in May of 1998, during a commencement speech at the Annapolis Naval Academy in Annapolis, President Clinton released PDD 63, Presidential Decision Directive number 63, which effectively asked private industry to reorganize itself by sectors to work with each other, even they were competitors, loosen some of the issues around antitrust, because that was one of the big issues, and I'll explain a little bit more here in a moment on that. But that was a policy issue. Also assigned various government agencies that responsibility, like I mentioned, Treasury with the financial sector, energy with gas, oil, transportation with trucking and railways and airlines, to work with them to deal with some of these issues. The other aspect of it was the president suggested that private sector, through the organization, create what's known today, and was the term was used at the time, ISACs, Information Sharing Analysis Centers, where you get those competitors that I mentioned a few moments ago, you get them in the same room, and you say, listen, yeah, we're competitors in the marketplace, but when it comes to protection of critical infrastructure, we all have to play nice together. And that was the fundamental concept. We're all going to get together and form these things. The financial services, ironically, and I think appropriately so, was the first one to sort of organize itself. All the big banks, all the big financial, all the loan companies sort of got together and said, okay, we're going to create a mechanism by which we can actively, on a real-time basis, share information on threats, vulnerabilities, and best practices. And it was really interesting because I don't know how many of you remember, since you're all security experts here, when we had one of the first attacks that was widespread on a Unix system, where it basically was hitting some of the mail systems. The Financial Services ISAC, Information Sharing Analysis Center, knew that was coming. There was a researcher who said, listen, we're seeing people probing this one particular port on a regular basis. We think that's a prelude to a hack. And by the way, the interesting piece of this, it was a known vulnerability. It was on a Microsoft product that had been out there for about 6 months. It was also a vulnerability that existed in Unix systems as well that had been known about for 6 or 7 months. And the patch was out there for both operating systems, but nobody really did anything about it. So they sent this alert amongst themselves, but didn't tell anybody else. But they were prepared. So they were doing all they can to protect their systems. In the meantime, everything else was falling like dominoes. So consequently, as the other ISACs, which the second one was the IT, the Information Technology ISAC, I had the I don't know, it was luck of the draw or the misfortune of being the first president of it, was bringing Microsoft and Oracle and Sun and AT&T and IBM and everybody together as the IT sector ISAC, was an interesting thing. It was really cool from one perspective. The security professionals, all of us, we all got along anyway, because we'd sit there and every time something bad would happen, the marketing people would say, hey, we got to go on television and say, it was them, not us. And we're going, no, we don't want to say that. It could be us next time, and it probably will be. So we recognized that we had a common enemy in whoever was attacking our systems, whether it was deliberately for financial gain as it is for today, or in those days it was more or less just for disruptive purposes. So as a consequence, as these ISACs got set up, we found a tremendous boon in sharing information amongst ourselves, but by example, the financial services was we couldn't keep that a closed community. So we had to share information across the ISACs as well. The threat picture was really difficult. I mean, it's easy for us to go, and I can imagine, I can ask any of you in the room right now, where do you see the next threat coming from? And you could say hackers, you could say virus, you could say worms, you could say attacks on mobile systems, you could say data theft and identity theft and these sort of things. We all know sort of where it is. But can you really identify who it is? It's not as if you've got a nation state that's out there you can point the finger to and say they are anti-democratic or they are anti-religion or they're anti-this or anti-that. We know they're going to be out there. So identifying the threats was very, very difficult. The easy thing, though, for the ISACs in particular, identifying the vulnerabilities. As with the first citation that I gave, that was basically a known vulnerability had existed for a long period of time, but nobody fixed it. So that sort of opened the door a little bit to what used to be security by obscurity. Is everybody familiar with that term, by the way? Yeah, most of us in this business are. But it was security by obscurity. If we don't tell people about the vulnerability, nobody will know about it. Well, that's not true. Somebody's going to know about it. They may not say it publicly, but they're sure going to exploit it. So that sort of opened the door for the ability for companies that were developing software to say, yes, we've had a report of a vulnerability and here's the patch. It was still a little bit slower than we liked, but clearly it was an issue where we now talked about the vulnerabilities we have. So the ISACs then, irrespective of which ISAC the information came into, were able to share that information with others. So let me zoom ahead to right in the aftermath, actually just before September 11th of 2001. There was a recognition that we didn't want, and we meaning the security community, didn't want particularly the U.S. government telling us how to do security. They didn't want us to say, you have to use Symantec, you have to use McAfee, you have to use Trend, or you can't use this firewall because the principals are from another country and we don't trust them and all this stuff. We didn't want the government doing that to us. We didn't really feel the government had the technical ability, particularly in the security space, to even try to delineate what are some of the best practices. So it was decided what we want to do is we want to continue to drive this from a market forces perspective and keep the government out of our business. The government, on the other side, felt, wait a minute, in 1998 we released this PD63. Here it is in year 2001. We're having now the upswing of viruses, worms, and Trojans, which quite honestly, percentage-wise, was not much greater than it was in the previous years. The difference was, you look at the spike that we had from 1994, and I think last year we crossed the threshold of 1 billion users online. 1 billion users. So as this usage is going up, the number of viruses and Trojans and stuff are percentage-wise going up as well. But what happened now, the impact is greater because you have more users out there that are impacted by it. And so what happened? The government felt, wait a minute, there's not enough progress being made. So the intent was, in April of 2001, now President Bush is in office, to create a President's Committee on Critical Infrastructure, or the President's Critical Infrastructure Protection Board. I should know that. That's when I was appointed to. And basically do 10 committees. One of them would look at the education piece of it and what we're doing, which is why we have the Centers of Academic Excellence, of course, which one Purdue is and has been ever since the very beginning. We look at issues around international issues. This is not, these issues don't stop at the borders of U.S. or even North America. This is an international issue. Look at issues of national security systems in the government. A big issue we have. Look at education and awareness for end users and consumers. I mean, I hear day and day, and I see it in my own life, where one of the biggest weak links that we have is not the technology, it's the end user. And real live example, I walked in when I was at the White House, walked into a major security company, waiting to meet with the CEO, who was running a little bit behind, which happens to all of us, sitting there just chatting with his admin, and I happened to look down in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, had this little balloon popped up that says, security updates waiting to be installed. I asked out of curiosity, I said, by the way, notice you've got that installed. That pops up all the time. That is so annoying, I just wish people would stop doing that. And she clicked it off. And I said, do you understand what that's for? She goes, yeah, it's got to do some update, but I don't have time to do that right now. And the machine, of course, is connected to the internet and all the vulnerabilities and exploits and scannings going on. I'm sitting there thinking, that's really unbelievable. This is a major security company. Here's somebody that works there that was not a security specialist that basically said, I don't understand what this means, and it annoys me, so kept shutting it off.